Good afternoon, ladies. Welcome to the meeting of the Development Control and Regulatory Board, the 14th of July 2022. This is a public meeting and is being broadcast. It's being broadcast live via YouTube. Could I remind members to turn their microphones on when speaking and off when they're finished speaking. We have one substitute today, that's Mrs. Hilary Fryer, who is substituting for Craig Smith. Item 1 on the agenda then is the minutes of the last meeting. Now I propose that the minutes of meeting are held on the 16th of June 2022 are taken as read, confirmed and signed. Is everyone agreed to that? Unanimous then. You. Item 2, I have not received any questions from the public. Item 3, I have not received any questions from members under Standing Order 7(3) and 7(5). Item 4, there are no urgent items. Item 5 is declarations of interest in respect of items on the agenda. It is noted that all parish members who are also members of town and district council and liaison committees will have a personal interest in those applications which relate to areas covered by those authorities. Are there any further interest to declare at this time? That looks to be no then. Item 6 is petitions. I haven't received any petitions under Standing Order 35. Moving on then to item number 7, which is the application this afternoon for Breedon Quarry. There are 2 separate applications, but they will be read as one, and we will need 2 separate votes at the end of the deliberations. Katie Ferguson is going to present the applications to us. So over to you, Katie, please.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just check everyone can hear me okay? Yeah, perfect. This presentation will cover 2 applications submitted by Breedon Southern Limited. Although the applications are separate, they relate to the same site and changes to conditions attached to the same planning permission. As such, to avoid duplication, both applications have been considered together. The first application is seeking to vary condition 3 of the existing planning permission to allow an extension of time for completion of operations from 2042 to 2078. The second application is a review of the old mineral permission, also known as a ROMP. This is not an application that can be granted or refused, but it is about updating conditions attached to an existing planning permission to ensure that they meet modern standards. Breedon Quarry is located north of Breedon on the Hill, with the village itself lying just beyond the southern western boundary of the current quarry workings. Breedon Quarry as an application site extends to approximately 70.8 hectares, containing the existing quarry and the consented quarry extension and associated works. The quarry is one of only 2 limestone quarries in Leicestershire, the other being Cloud Hill, which is also operated by Breedon Southern Limited and located approximately 1.2 kilometres to the south. This slide shows the existing access to Breedon Quarry, which is off Main Street within the village of Breedon on the Hill. And this slide highlights the public's footpath M12 and M14. M14 follows the eastern, northern and western boundary of Breedon Quarry, and public footpath M12 bounds the western part of the quarry. There are multiple listed buildings within the vicinity of Breedon Quarry. The key ones are highlighted on this slide: Breedon Church, the Old School, and Breedon Hall, Walls and Coach House. This slide shows Breedon Church, which sits adjacent to the northwestern boundary of the existing quarry in an elevated position. And Breedon Southern Limited has offices adjacent to the quarry, as shown on this slide, and they lie within the red line application area and are accessible by the main site entrance off Main Street. In 2006, planning permission was granted for an eastern extension to Bredon Quarry, and associated development, including the construction of a new highway and quarry access. This slide shows the extent of the existing planning permission, highlighting the existing quarry, the extension, a new road, the new site access, site compound, and landscaping areas. This planning permission is also subject to a legal agreement covering highways, works and routing, diversion of footpath M11, the creation of permissive paths, the restoration of Bredon Quarry, restriction on mineral extraction, SSI management of Bredon Hill, the cycleway between Cloud Hill Trail and Squirrel Lane, continuation of the liaison committee, review of the existing planning permission, and the establishment of a trust fund. This slide shows a photograph of the current situation of the consented quarry extension from the junction of Main Street and Wilson Road. In addition, this is another photograph of the current situation of the consented quarry extension looking southwards from Wilson Road. As mentioned, the applications relate to an extension of time for completion of quarry operations and a rump. As both applications relate to the same planning permission, they were consulted on together. 2 public representations were received as part of the consultation. The first contained comments seeking confirmation that an existing planning condition, which related to a non-planting zone to allow for visual views of Bredon Church from their property, would be carried forward, should planning permission be granted. The second public representation highlighted concerns about the impacts of noise and dust, if there would be a requirement to vacate their property, phasing details and timeframes, and the development expanding anywhere within the red line boundary. As part of the consented planning permission, it was acknowledged that tree planting on the sight line from the residential property to Bredon Church may restrict views following modest tree growth. Therefore, as part of the original submission, it was proposed that a non-planting zone be identified and conditioned. As part of this application, an updated cross-section drawing was submitted and the existing planning condition updated to remove the residents' concern. In relation to the impact of noise and dust, phasing details, timeframes, and the red line boundary, the working methods are not proposed to alter at Bredon Quarry, and therefore is considered that these details can be suitably controlled by existing planning conditions, which would be carried forward with any grant of planning permission. The first application seeks the variation of Condition 3 of the existing planning permission to extend the time for completion of operations from 2042 to 2078. The application also proposes an updated phased working and restoration scheme. The application does not propose to alter working methods currently used in the winning and working of limestone at Bredon Quarry. The operating hours will remain as existing and production limits will remain within the permitted limits of 500,000 tonnes per annum. In addition, traffic movements will not be extended beyond the current operating hours for the quarry, and it is not proposed to modify the existing approved access arrangements. Bredon Quarry forms an important source of crushed rock supply within the current pattern for aggregate supply in the locality. In addition, mineral operations at Bredon Quarry also enable the release of gold and amber gravel, a natural limestone resource quarried exclusively at Bredon. The proposal would result in an extension of time for the completion of operations from 2042 to 2078. Therefore, there would be an extended period of impact on the local environment and community through the continued operations. However, the existing and proposed planning conditions have appropriate measures to protect against any unacceptable detrimental impacts on the amenity and health of people and the environment, and therefore the proposal is considered acceptable in accordance with policy DM1 and DM2 of the Leicestershire Minerals and Waste Local Plan and policy D2 of the North West Leicestershire Local Plan. The local historic environment surrounding Bredon Quarry is significant. The additional time allowed by this permission will prolong the harm to the historic environment, but this harm has been assessed as less than substantial, and with the mitigation measures secured, the public benefit through the enhanced relationship between Bredon Church and the quarry outweighs the harm caused. Therefore, the development is considered acceptable in accordance with policy DM8 of the Leicestershire Minerals and Waste Local Plan. With regard to the proposal to extend the time for completion of operations from 2042 to 2078, it is concluded that there would be no significant adverse environmental effects nor amenity impacts as a result of the development, with any impacts being suitably controlled to acceptable levels, subject to a series of planning conditions and a legal agreement. It is therefore recommended that the proposed development be permitted subject to the imposition of conditions and the completion of an updated legal agreement. The second application is a review of the old mineral permission and the submission of modern planning conditions pertaining to the existing planning permission. A ROMP differs from a normal planning application in that the process is governed by the Environment Act 1995 rather than the Town and Country Planning Act. As set out at the beginning of the presentation, it is about reviewing conditions attached to an existing minerals permission and is not an application that can be refused. The purpose of the ROMP is to ensure that the conditions attached to any mineral planning permission do not become outdated with the passage of time. As part of the ROMP, there are no alterations to the consented highways works, the production limits, the working hours, or the existing working methods at Bredon Quarry. Proposed conditions were included by the applicant as part of the submission. The Minerals Planning Authority has undertaken a consultation exercise and have taken on board the comments received through this process. The feedback from the consultation has been used to inform further updates and modernisation of conditions, and additional conditions have been recommended, and these include the requirement for surveys to be prepared to evaluate the presence of protected species, which could be affected by the proposed operation, and provide appropriate mitigation and/or compensation prior to the working of any phase. The conditioning of an updated environmental scheme, which sets out the procedures to be adopted and outlines the measures to be taken in order to justify, mitigate, control and monitor each environmental impact, and a condition securing ongoing monitoring of groundwater levels to suitably manage the risk posed to groundwater resources from the proposed development. It is important to highlight an applicant can claim compensation where a Minerals Planning Authority determines conditions that differ from those submitted by the applicant, and the effect of those conditions, other than restoration or aftercare conditions, prejudice to an unreasonable degree either the economic viability of the operation or the asset value of the site. Whilst the proposed recommended conditions set out in Appendix A differ from those that were originally submitted by the applicant, they do not prejudice the economic viability of the operation or the asset value of the site. In addition, the applicant has confirmed in writing that the conditions are acceptable. The restoration plan submitted with the application is reflective of the approved conceptual restoration scheme, and due to the long timescales of the proposal, the Mineral Planning Authority is of the view that the biodiversity priorities, restoration and bird strike concerns can be discussed, assessed and created at the appropriate time within these conditions which require submissions. With regards to the ROMP application, it is considered that various measures contained within the planning application, together with the imposition of conditions and completion of an updated legal agreement, would not cause an unacceptable impact to local residents and their local environment, and the proposed recommended conditions do not unacceptably restrict the working rights of Bredon Quarry. It is therefore recommended that the conditions be updated as set out in Appendix 1. To summarise, the two applications were submitted by Bredon Southern Limited and have been considered together to avoid duplication. The first application seeks to vary Condition 3 of the existing planning permission to allow an extension of time for completion of operations from 2042 to 2078. This time extension would impact the local environment and residential amenity. However, the continued operations would not be significant as the conditions have appropriate measures to protect against any detrimental impacts. In addition, the prolonged harm to the historic environment has been assessed as less than substantial, and with the mitigating measures secured, the public benefit through an enhanced relationship between Bredon Church and the quarry outweighs the harm caused. It is therefore recommended that the proposed development be permitted subject to the imposition of conditions and the completion of an updated legal agreement. The second application is a ROMP application and involves the submission of modern planning conditions pertaining to the existing planning permission. Whilst the proposed recommended conditions set out in Appendix A differ from those that were originally submitted by the applicant, they do not prejudice the economic viability of the operation or the asset value of the site. Matters relating to biodiversity priorities, restoration and bird strike concerns can be discussed, assessed and created at the appropriate time within these conditions which require submissions. Therefore, it is recommended that the conditions be updated as set out in Appendix 1. That's all from me. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Katie. I understand the local member, Mr. Rushton, has not submitted any comments either way. Is that anything?
That's correct. Yes, I have sent Mr. Rushton the report. He hasn't submitted any comments.
Okay, thank you. In that, then, it's open to members. Dan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to compliment the authors of the report. I thought it was excellent. I think the introduction dialogue, although the speed of the delivery was amazing. Blimey, it was fabulous. Thank you very much. That was brilliant. It's well put together and it's so easy to follow, really. The pattern of as you walk your way through it, virtually understanding it. all of the statutory bodies are obviously all on board with it. So I always look for things like that to see where there's a crack in the present, but there isn't. They're all on side with it. I'm really impressed that they're going to retain the soil on site because it belongs there. So it's quite natural that they're using the soil. I'm not a geologist or anything, but I would imagine it's more appropriate. But more than that, it's going to save literally hundreds and hundreds of lorries ploughing through in years to come, bringing soil back to the site. So I think that's very good. The bit I do sort of wonder about is the dust levels, air pollution. There's no talk of this, and normally with sort of smashing stone, there's dust and chemical reaction that comes out that can be very harmful. And obviously the lorries with PM 2.5 from exhaust tyres and braking systems emit all the time. So, but we never, you know, there's nothing about that. So I just wondered how they deal with it. And is it an application that they're already using there, and it's not even worth them commenting because it's part of their practice. But anyway, well done. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Was that a question, Dan? Or...
Yes,
please.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So obviously part of the existing quarry, they have a current environmental scheme that has different dust measures in place along with like blasting and noise. So as part of this scheme, they've updated that so to include more modern practices, and that will just be carried forward. So they'll have the dust gauges around, they'll have certain points they have to monitor it, and then we get the results from that and then liaise with them if the levels are, if there's spikes, we understand obviously where it's come from, if there's alterations that we can make. I was out on site last week at Cloud Hill, and they're just introducing some new dust measures there. So it's always changing on ways they can do things. So although it's not maybe mentioned, so I apologise, it's not fully in the report, the updated environmental scheme covers that kind of dust side, and the EHO was happy for that to be as long as it was conditioned. So that's how we've managed it. Thank you.
Okay, Keith.
Thank you, Chair. My question is basically similar to one that's been raised. Would it be possible to send me the last 2 years dust monitoring reports, please? The quarry is the first question. And secondly, I'm a bit concerned that the report didn't include anything to do with dust monitoring and noise monitoring and what damping down procedures they use for the crushing of the rock and all the rest of it. Because obviously a resident has raised a concern, noise, dust, vibration, and it says that the current systems will be fine. But if you could put your picture up on screen, any picture of the quarry you've got on screen, if they're going to move the operations further to the east and north, are they going to move the dust monitoring machines further to the east and the north, or are they just going to leave them where they're currently positioned?
So the main part of this application was obviously based solely on the time extension. So the monitoring locations and the dust impacts and the noise impacts were obviously covered in the previous mission, but also, yes, of course, they would move them as and when if they decide to go into the extension area, they'll obviously alter that in relation to where they're working. And with regards to the first part, yes, I can make sure I'll make a note and send you the reports.
Can I come back, Chair?
Yeah.
I think it should be tied down a little bit tighter than that. You can't just say that they're going to use the same systems. It needs to be more precise. So when their quarry moves, the machine that measures the dust and everything should be moved with it. You can't just rely on them to do it. It should be set as a condition, in my opinion. I'll take advice and guidance, but I'm on the committee at Barden and Whittick quarries. They move their monitoring equipment as they move the quarry operation, and they've installed more, and they give the reports out to the public. I went to the Breedon website and I couldn't find any of the dust monitoring reports on the website. So that concerns me. Maybe I couldn't find it, somebody can point me in the right direction, but I've seen no data to say whether it's good, bad or indifferent.
No, that's fine. I can definitely send you that. And condition 44 in the permission with the environmental scheme requires that to be updated and reviewed. So as they move into the extension area, that scheme will be reviewed and assessed where they need to put the locations and everything like that. So it's not a case of they'll submit it now and that's where they are. It gets reviewed regularly to make sure, obviously, if there's any issues or complaints, they alter what they're doing to make sure, obviously, it's compliant.
Okay, thank you. Les.
Thank you, Chair. idle curiosity. Point 28 and 29. You don't need it. You'll know. So this is about the time of extension or the period of extension. So 36 years they're asking for, and then immediately beneath that it states that it's got approximately 55 years worth of life still there. So I'm just curious, does this mean in 36 years I'm going to be sat here looking?
You should be looking.
subtle sarcasm there, Chair. I'm just curious if they know that there's 55 years of working life there, why only apply for 36, or is there a limit on how long you can actually ask for? So over to you. Thank you.
So the current permission lasts until 2042. So they've obviously added on the 36 years from the 2042 date to give them enough time from if they were to start now or next year to obviously complete it. Does that make sense? Yes.
So it's 55 years from now.
Yeah.
I did say idle curiosity.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Anyone else? Mrs. Fryer.
I'll defer to Mrs. Fryer for this.
Thank you very much, Lee. Thank you. Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can.
Well, I'm looking at, I haven't been involved in this at all before, and I'm looking at some things, if I can just bring it up, on page 17 of the report. Oh, yes, page 17 of 90. It's to do with the ecology and also for the birds and newts and bat breathing. What I'm looking at, they're saying there will be some impact on wide range of breeding birds will be impacted by the proposed works. However, with the implementation of recommendations, this is number 39 paragraph, it is considered that the long-term avian biodiversity would see a moderate positive improvement, but that's after 2078, isn't it? It's not now. I read that if they extend, the birds will be impacted now and anything else, but with the improvement and the reinstatement after 2078, it should come back again. In my simple way of looking, if birds are impacted now, they're not going to say, oh, we'll come back in 55 years and see if it's okay. And what they're going to say, right, off, I'm off and I won't be back. And that's not only birds, there's everything else that goes in. What I'm really wanting to know is, if they move into the extension, are they going to start reinstating the old workings at the same time? Or is everything where they are now and the extension not be improved until after 2078? That's what I'm trying, because if there's part of the quarry is not going to be used after 42 or whatever it is, 46, then surely that can start to be generated again. Does it make sense?
Yes, I think so. So I'd chip in if I've not fully understood. So the conditions added in relate to getting surveys prior to each phasing. So obviously if there's species or protected species in there, they know to put in mitigation or compensation measures for that. As they go through each phase and they go into the extension area, they will restore part of the existing quarry prior, and they'll do it in phased restoration. So there will be some phased, well, yeah, it will move around. So I'd like to think that the economic value of when they start doing the first part, obviously will pick round, or if there is certain species in there, they'll be aware of it ahead in advance, and they can put in some compensation or mitigation in place to either move them or make sure they're obviously protected.
I think with the greatest respect, we would all like to think, but it's whether it will actually happen and what they would consider protected species, because it has to be an infrastructure for birds and any animals, anything. Otherwise, you will end up with a desert, and it will take 100 years to get back to some form of normality.
Mr. Bannister.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm generally supportive of the recommendation, noting that the applications are in accordance with the NPPF local plans and the Leicestershire Waste Plan as well. I noted the concerns regarding bird strike and East Midland Airport being less than 2 kilometres away, and they had raised some concerns. They appear to be satisfied with the sort of mitigation risks. But my question is whether or not there needs to be any specific conditions to manage that mitigation for against bird strikes at the aircraft coming in at going out of East Midlands.
So there is a condition within the Planning Permission in Appendix 1, I'm just trying to find the number, which highlights that they have to, whatever restoration scheme they submit has to accord with the aerodrome bird strike regulation. So I had long conversations with the airport, and because obviously the restoration is a long time away, it was agreed once that submission comes in, we can then obviously manage it. If it's could be 10 years, it could be 15 years. But no, there is a condition in there that says they have to comply with the aero safeguarding and the bird strikes.
I'm grateful for that. I was looking for that condition, but I think I can find it now. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else wish to speak? Keith.
Sorry, follow up. With regards to the dust reports, could you possibly let me know what the blasting times as well? Because it affects the dust, and I don't want to be ringing you up saying we've got high dust here. If you could share the blasting times with me, that would be great. Now I took mine off.
There we go. Currently, they don't blast at Bredon. They drill because the amount of tonnage they need isn't significant enough to blast. So they won't. Since I've been the case officer since pre-COVID, they haven't done a single blast at Bredon. But obviously, if they recommence in the extension area, they will. So I'll obviously do that once as and when they do.
Okay, the recommendation is to permit us not to move anything. Mr. Allen?
Chair, happy to move the officer recommendation.
Yeah, now we're voting on two. So we really have to take two votes.
I'll move the first recommendation.
Okay. The second for that.
Second.
Okay, all in favour of the first? Thank you. Can I have a mover and a second for the?
Happy to move.
Okay.
And I'll second this one, Chair.
I've got you. Yeah. All right. All in favour of the second one then. Got that? Okay. Thanks very much. We move on to item 8 then. Is delegated decisions. Just wait until we finish the conversation. You might learn something, you never know. You might be lucky. Okay, so item 8 is delegated decisions schedule April 2022 to June 22. This report is a note report, but are there any questions on any items on that? Item 9 is delegated enforcement notices issued April 22 to June 22. This is also a note thing as well. Are there any questions? Mr. Allen.
Thank you, Chair. So this is kind of within my borough area, if you like. So if I could just have a copy and an update on that, I'd be much appreciated. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Item 10, yes. As I said, there are no urgent items. Item 11 is Chairman's announcements. And that is that the next meeting is on the 11th. It's on the 11th of August at 2 o'clock. With that, if there's anything else, I'll close the meeting at. Did you want to?
Only that my apologies for that meeting are already recorded, Chairman. Thank you.
Yes, I've noticed that, Les. Yes.